Hey, good morning, YouTube. What's going on out there, everybody? Thanks for checking in. Friday morning, first Friday of 2019, right? Make sure my days are right. Get my years right while we're at it. What's going on? Looks like it's a little bit of rain here and there. We're supposed to be getting this big mess coming off the coast here come Saturday night. Might be getting some snow in these parts. So that's good for us. Got some weather rolling in, weather rolling out on the East Coast. Hope everybody's ready for a good weekend. If we're finally recovered from New Year's, is to be determined yet. But thanks for checking in, everybody. Looks like we got Killed Deer Survivals with us. Walter Davis, the Delaware Patriot. Good morning. What's going on? Good chat yesterday. Good chat. And I guess Dad on YouTube checked in real early, like hour and a half, 2 hours ago. What time was that? He checked in over an hour ago. Going to the dentist. Not fun, it doesn't sound like. Not fun at all. And snow all over Canada. Don't forget about them. But what is going to be going on today? We got the stock market madness that went on, and it looks like it's going to continue on today as the job number of all job numbers rolled in of some sort, where they came from and how they came in a December jobs report. It just baffles the mind because I ain't never seen a winter. I mean, they usually don't count seasonal jobs either. Very, very unusual to come out in a December like that. It'd be interesting to hear some thoughts from those in the know on that and where that came from. But the pre-market is bouncing off of that. But is it just the dead cat bounce continuing? There was a good video by Greg Manarino over here on the YouTube that I shared around yesterday. I think he really gets at the crux, and everybody really needs to listen to what the issue is. And we've been talking about the bond market, and that's the real driver, or what to pay attention to, of how things are not going to improve as the Fed raises rates. But I want everybody to give this a listen here. We'll play this at least to a certain point, and I'll probably won't play the whole thing, but we'll play through it to where it gets to the biggest points. And I would say spread the word. I'll put the links in the description box for everybody. And it's also on the Twitter and the G+. But the title here, stock market crash. If you're worried about it, you're in one. Pay attention. Stock market crash is imminent, or that we are in one. And let me get this rolling here. Listen up.
January 3rd, 2018, people. We have to talk. I am sorry this video is out a little late. When I tell you this communication device has been exploding for me all day long with regard to the implosion that is about to take place. Look, here's the deal. You no longer have to look for a stock market crash. You're in one. You are in one here. And before I even move forward, and I'm not pointing a finger at anyone specific, all right, because I know some of you, are going to have a flip out. Anyone that is telling you that you should be buying stocks here, well, let me say this. That has got to be the most irresponsible comment out of anyone's mouth in the history of the financial markets. You never tell a person to catch a falling knife. Would you do that? Would you tell anyone, maybe your worst enemy, I don't know, to catch a falling knife? Of course you wouldn't. Of course you wouldn't here. So I don't care what source you might hear it from. I don't care how much you might trust this person. Ignore it, okay? What you should be looking at here, if you've been following my work all these years, nobody knows it better than you, and I am damn proud to say it. It's the bond market. It's imploding. And I want to cover that too, but let's start off with the basics. So stocks got slammed today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed, I believe, about 660 points in the negative, pretty much at session lows. And that is what the Confederacy of Dunces wants you to look at. They will not tell you that something pretty epic just happened today, referring to the bond market. And I tweeted out an alert. I want people to pay attention to this, and I'm going to talk a little bit further right here and right now. The U.S. 10-year yield today hit 2.55%. Okay. You have a flat yield curve. It's completely flat. But the issue is bigger than that right now. It goes back to something I've been warning about already for quite a while. It's called a credit freeze. Okay, I'm going to talk about that too, but let me back up a moment. The federal funds rate, you hear how the Fed has raised rates. That's what we're talking about. It's the overnight rate, the rate at which institutions, banks, will lend to each other. It's 2.5%. Okay. Now, what I want to bring to your lovely attention is this. This is just so sick. The 2-year, the 3-year, the 5-year, the 7-year, right now, are yielding lower than the federal funds rate. Okay. Now, to me, right now, this is bigger than a 2 to 10 inversion. Okay. Why? Because, again, why would an institution lend out their cash when the overnight rate is actually higher than most of the bond market is yielding right now? So just to put this into perspective for you, this is a pathway to another credit freeze. And let me put that into perspective for you. That means you go to your bank, guess what? No cash. You try to get out of an ATM, you can't do it. Institutions do not lend to each other. Banks shut down, businesses shut down. I mean, we're talking about Great Depression. And we're there. We're here now. We are in the crash right here and right now. I want everyone to be aware of that. Unless something drastic happens, drastic like now, we are staring at another meltdown. I can't stress this enough, people. I can't. Let me put yet another perspective on this for you and why this time is different than every other time before. Different than the meltdown of 2008. Different than the dot-com bubble. Let's just talk about these two because they're not that long ago. How many of you out here, let's make a little joke, with a show of hands, get your hand up. Let's all participate. Remember this guy. I mean, I've been screaming from rooftops about this. I've explained to you that margin debt, the amount of cash that has been borrowed by individuals and institutions to participate in this financial fantasy charade of a market is at an all-time record high. What does that mean? People hear these words, they watch the movie Margin Call, but what does it mean? It's very simple. As stocks continue their fall, and that's what I believe is going to, I'm not saying we're going to go straight down, okay? You would expect to see a fall and up, kind of like that pattern, okay? But as this progresses, these individuals, these institutions who have borrowed to participate in this market, well, guess what? The lenders are going to say, hold on a second here, we need to protect our capital. So the borrowers are going to receive a margin call, which means they're going to have to sell assets to cover the call. So look, I mean, this starts a vicious cycle in motion. Stocks have the potential to plummet once margin calls start to be issued. You understand? This is not a hard situation to really put together here, all right? But you need to think about how this is going to affect you. And I'm not just talking about your investments here. If you are stuck on the long side of this market, that is, a general investment plan where you only make cash where the market goes higher, you are in a lot of trouble here. A lot of trouble. And you need to take action. You need to start talking to the right people. And again, I'm going to tell you, yeah, the stock market is interesting and it's kind of spooky to watch what's going on here. But watch the bond market and think about what I just said. I'm not going to repeat it with regard to the federal funds rate, the 10-year yield, the inversion that is going to happen. We are going to get a full-on inversion here. But to me, the fact that most of the bonds right now are paying less than the federal funds rate, that's big. That's very big. If the 10-year yield, and we are on the threshold of that, is paying less than the federal funds rate, well, what do you think? Does that sound good to you? People, think about it. What I would suggest, honestly, to people here, don't leave yourself right now without any cash at all that you can hold in your hand. In the event of a credit freeze, and look, it could happen tomorrow. We don't know when this is going to happen here again. We've never been here before, but there's nothing wrong with having a few dollars here in your hand that you don't have to go swipe a machine or go to your bank to get. Keep some cash around here. understand, in case of a credit freeze. All right, that was the big event that really rocked the markets last time. People don't know this. Most people have no idea, because the Federal Reserve, what they did, they stepped in. You remember all that with quantitative easing one that unfroze the credit markets? What are they going to do now? Is the Federal Reserve going to start printing cash out of thin air again? Lower interest rates? People, look. In 2008, sit down for this one. Sit down for what I'm about to tell you, okay? In 2008, that was the solution, that to print cash out of thin air in epic amounts and buy everything in sight, okay? The solution now has become the disease, all right? So if the Federal Reserve will all of a sudden to start, I don't know, because they're already printing cash, how do you think the Federal Reserve keeps rates where they are? How do they keep rates suppressed? By getting into the markets. They can't just say things. So if the Federal Reserve will all of a sudden do what some world leaders want them to do, that is keep rates suppressed, that is continue to print money, well, that's what we've been doing now for over an entire decade, and look where we are. Do you think doing the same exact thing is going to fix the problem?
All right, we'll pause that there. And
seriously, I don't care who they are either.
Yeah, move on out. But that's a thing to further watch. So we've been talking about. Yesterday was definitely interesting in that regard. We'll see how it moves forward from here with this little bounce they're giving everything with this, what should only be called an inflated job number. I don't know what else you could call it. But definitely interesting, the inversion that we've been looking at, and it's been occurring. But it is what it is. So some of those things, protect yourself as best as possible, like he said. Particularly when we talk about credit freeze was the big thing that I took away from that, and how that might work, and how there's less actions that the banks can take to lessen the blow this time around than last, and how it's going to be a lot worse than previous. And who was it did a video? Prepper Princess did a video talking about a economic downturn coming, and she had talked to people who had been through the Great Depression. I think the key takeaway to remember is it'll be so much worse for so many more, because people everybody's exposed to the debt. Everybody's exposed to not only the stock market with forced IRAs and forced 401ks and mandatory withdrawals, but also the dollar is not backed by anything. You know, the Great Depression, it was still backed. You know, it was still a backed currency. Now it's well, unless you just go straight to war. War's about the only thing it's backed by. But moving on, we'll move on down. We'll check back in here. We got the market should be open here in about a minute. It's showing a bounce into the green, but I would call that jobs number suspicious. That's just unusually a weird December job number. And we've talked about the job markets before, about how the data doesn't represent solid numbers anyway, but it gives the impression and the markets react to it. So it's something you look at. But what else is going on? The communists took over the Congress again yesterday, and are raising a big stink about the possibilities of impeachment. Is their big line that is going around, which really is just theater, because it has to go through the Senate for a conviction, and what are you going to do? I don't see that getting through when there's just false charges. I haven't heard of any solid high crimes or misdemeanors that they have to accuse the president of. But that's just me, and I'm not a fan. So what can you do? But the political sideshow there will continue, I think, for like quite a while, as they did pass a budget out of the House yesterday, but who knows how to go through the Senate. It doesn't have funding for the pet project of the wall, so that probably won't get anywhere there. So the sideshow will probably continue, at least like Dad says, until the food stamps get ready to run out, and then they'll push everything through to get everybody back on food stamps, unless they're going to play brinksmanship really and maybe push that a little bit, a couple weeks into February, and people will really be suffering that are at that end of the scale, not only economically, but that'll be a rough period. Looks like Rooster Cogburn joined in with us. Good morning. How's it going, Rooster? So you got comments we got going. Killdeer, I wouldn't. Man, that's a lot of money to have in the bank. I wouldn't. No way. Keep bare minimum to pay bills electronically, because that's what so many processes work now. And get everything else out. That's what I would do. There's no way I would keep that much money in the bank. If I can buy a large item, I wouldn't keep more money than I could buy a refrigerator with in the bank. Let's put it that way. No way I would put your life savings in a bank. There's too many examples of bank holidays, and they're just going to abuse that money. They are abusing your money. Anybody keeps that much money in the bank, they're just abusing it, and it's going to less benefit because they're not paying you any real interest on that. It would be better to get real goods, or just keep what you can on hand. You know, what's the purpose of having that much cash in the bank, really? Like Greg was just talking about, when the markets freeze up, when that debt issue markets become an issue, the bank holidays will be more and more likely. And the funny thing is, Kildare, you want to make a good video? Have her go into the bank and ask for her money back and see what kind of eyeballs she gets. You're told you have, X number of thousands of dollars in the bank, that's what you're told. Go in there and try to draw it out. It's not treated like it's your money, especially in that amount. You can go to the ATM and draw out your piddly $500, $600. I don't know do individual banks have individual limits on ATM withdrawals, right? Go in there and try to get your money out that is a significant amount like that. See what they look at you like. They will call security on you. They will run around and talk you out of it in any way possible, because they don't have it, and especially in that sum probably. They have to go and call the armored car up for delivery. Delaware Patriot says we should not only keep cash on hand, but we should continue to use it more. Yeah, they want to go to electronic currency because that's more controllable. For sure. Don't want to move on out of that, I guess. I did see an interesting article on the Zero Hedge talking about Brexit, talking about something that's coming up upon us with the separation from the EU that everybody's dragging their heels on over there. That'll definitely have implications for worldwide, especially economically. But Northern Ireland has 1,000 officers on standby in case of no deal. They put 3,500 troops on standby in the event of a no-deal Brexit, which basically seals up borders, and there's no trade deals in place if they go with a no-deal Brexit, which is what they're fear-mongering with, because they want everybody to operate off fear and stay in the EU. And that's what even they calls it here, Project Fear campaign of doomsdaying warnings and threats designed to push MPs to vote for May's Brexit withdrawal agreement. They want to go with her, May's limp-wristed, soft, bushy milquetoast Brexit, which is basically not a Brexit. It's not a sovereignty move. It's a weak play at some economic concessions, basically. So they're reviving fears about violence in Northern Ireland. According to The Guardian, some 1,000 police officers from England and Scotland are beginning preparations and training for possible deployment to Northern Ireland in case of a no deal and the return of a hard border between Northern Ireland and the EU, the only land border between the EU state and UK. Really, Ireland should just get out of the EU too, but that's a separate issue. So this is one of the big contentions of avoiding the return of a hard border. So the police plan has been put in place after the police service of Northern Ireland requested reinforcements to deal with any trouble that arises. The training for officers in English forces and police in Scotland is expected to begin this month. I think, what is the Brexit, May? Is that the year? But this report comes as Irish Prime Minister insisted no revisions to May's Brexit plan would be made, and other EU leaders rebuffed May's last attempt at reopening negotiations, quashing rumors that a breakthrough might have been possible, burning the candle at the other end. And really, what leverage does the EU have? The EU's falling apart. Like, seriously, you're going in there with a real weak hand, or you're acting like you got a real weak hand when you have the upper hand when it comes to dealing with the EU. So they're trying to pass May's plan in the Parliament here coming up January 14th. The size of the police, 1,000 officers in support, is double the request that's usually requested during what they call a marching season, when the possibility of violence between Catholics and Protestants is at its highest. Maybe the Catholics and Protestants just get together and just kick the British out of there totally. But they don't look at it that way. One MP called fears about the return of a hard border nonsense propaganda, right? In remarks rejecting the government's latest overtures, Nigel Dodds said fears of a hard border were nonsense propaganda, adding, with this clarity emerging in London, Dublin, and Brussels, there is evidently no need for this aspect of the withdrawal agreement. Where did they link this from? Is this a Zero Hedge original, or is this it looks like a Zero Hedge original here. With only 85 days left until Brexit Day, so that's where we're at, 85 days from today, so I guess we can do the math. Just under 3 months, so that puts us into March. Beginning of April. What's my math like? Somewhere in April. Despite all the chatter about a plan B, a delay, or a second referendum, a no workable alternative has materialized. So that's where that's at. Again, using the fear of what people could do just because certain trade routes are shutting down. They're to drag their heels on Brexit. More and more excuses. But that's out there. See how that continues to develop. The bigger question is, how will the British people who voted for Brexit take it when they don't get a Brexit? That's the real concern here. They say when this is what democracy looks like, well, people start voting from the rooftops. Hey, good morning, Angel R. What's going on? Angel keeps all cash on hand. Rooster Cogburn trusts the banks. Great Man Outdoors, welcome. Thanks for coming to the chat. Yeah, if they cut off food stamps, we might see riots, right? It'll be interesting to see the games they play if we get to that point. They will finagle every drop of maneuvering they can, though, to prevent that, I'm sure. We shall see. Brewster says only $1,000 on the inside ATMs. Is that what your bank is? Different banks have different rules. I think it's $600 for mine, I think, is the max we can draw from an ATM. Yeah, Kildare, I'll just this is one of those things. Even just go try, I don't know, getting a $5,000 cashier check, to draw out. See how hard a process that is. They don't like giving away their money because that's the way they look at it. It's their money. You just borrow it for a short time to trade it with somebody else. Yeah, they have to alert. There's also the supposed anti-terrorism statutes, and it's not only if you withdraw too much of your own money. Yeah, if you travel with too much money, get pulled over by a cop with a bunch of cash. See what happens. They're gonna seize that stuff as it's becoming criminal to travel with cash or any other form of trading instrument. Get caught. If you're traveling with a significant number of silver rounds or gold rounds, they're gonna pin you up because that's what they've been trained. They've been trained to not trust the people. They don't know what's going on. Hey, Land of Landland, what's going on, Chris? Good morning. I don't have any Oreos with me. I'm out right now. Barry Wood, good morning. Looks like it's going to be a little rainy up your way, Barry, or snowy, depending on how high you are. Just checking the other headlines, seeing what else is going down. The politics of spreading inversions. That should be interesting. Hey, third option is checked in. Is this always your after work time frame? At this point, if you have a little cash or precious metals tucked away, are you being responsible, right? Are you? Well, it's just not convenient to carry physical stuff around, third option, That's that's what they keep pushing. They keep pushing the inconvenience. Check over on the Drudge. What else is going on? Anybody else got anything else on their radar? There was an interesting article over here. I saw this yesterday. FBI using Amazon's facial recognition. No surprise there. With Amazon developed that deal where they could put packages in the home and stuff. Must be pretty good if they're ahead of the FBI. The free market always gets ahead of government, right? Government always has to pawn it off the best stuff. But a lot of sideshows going on that seem to be just distractions when you consider the markets and what this political government shutdown is going on and supposed impeachment, yelling about impeachment, which is just what are they, non-starter, be the best way to say it. Rain for you, Barry, right? Markets are now open. Rallies 400 points. Yay. We shall see. We shall see. I don't think I've ever seen a 312,000 job growth number any time of the year, going back at least 10 years. That's just an absurdly high number. How they justify it is beyond me. Let's see what they get into. And non-farm payrolls jumped 312 with an expected payroll of 176,000. Says here 419,000 new workers entered the workforce. Labor participation rate grew to 63.1%. Everybody trying to get that Christmas money. A broader measure of unemployment that includes discouraged workers and those holding part-time jobs. The far bigger than expected 312,000 jump in non-farm payrolls in December would seem to make a mockery of market fears of an impending recession. Well, if people think that things are going to get bad, they're going to try to hustle and get their work in too, though. Who knows how many side hustles are going on that they don't track. That's a U.S. chief economist at Capital Economics. He added that the report suggests the U.S. economy still has considerable forward momentum. So we got a 324,000 last February. I don't remember that. Okay. My memory's getting worse and worse, I guess. What is it? 225,000 is kind of like the break line for a growing job market. So it used to go by 6-8 years ago, at least. The economy has been slowing, but somebody forgot to tell the labor markets. It says here, employers, it would seem, didn't get the memo that it's time to tighten their belts. Healthcare led the way in new jobs, adding 50,000 for the month. 38,000 new positions in ambulatory services and 7,000 more in hospitals. The industry saw a boom of 346,000 for the year compared to 284,000 the year before. Restaurants and bars added 41,000. So when you're not in the hospital, you're at the bar drinking, right? Living it up. Construction was a big gainer. Construction added 338,000 jobs in December, bringing the annual total to 280,000, a 12% gain from 2017's 250,000. Manufacturing also gained 32,000 for the month. Yada yada. 284,000 new positions, representing a 37% rise from the previous year. So it's all rosy across the board, I guess, in the job market perspective here, as it's being reported, at least by the Fed's numbers. Here's the key thing they go at. They throw it in at the end of the article. Report comes at the heightened market concerns over the Federal Reserve's future path. The U.S. Central Bank raised interest rates 4 times in 2018 in an effort to prevent the economy from overheating. But President Trump has criticized the Fed for endangering the recovery. Futures traders expect the Fed to hold steady through the year and, in fact, are pricing in a 45% of a rate cut by the end of 2019. So things are so bad that the Fed can't even raise interest rates they're going to have to lower them for this year. That is not a healthy economic sign. Greg just talked about it. The Fed futures rates are higher than the 2 through the 7-year bond rate yesterday. We're loaning out money, was costing them money. Very, very tight margins right there. The banks aren't going to get money from the Fed to loan it out at less rates than they're getting. It just doesn't make good sense. That's not going to last long. So the Fed would have to cut the rate in that scenario to get it under what the market is demanding or playing right now, because the bond market is a more free market, quote unquote. I mean, obviously it's not fully a free market, but it does represent people's decisions to buy into bonds even though it is manipulated by banks that go in there and buy large holdings or sell for that matter, to manipulate the bond prices. But they're still reflective of markets out there. And for people to be dumping so much money into bonds that the rates are lower like that, it should be concerning, because we don't get the Fed's fund rate on our interest return. We get a fraction of a fraction. That's why that $35,000 in the bank is a very poor decision. You're getting outpaced by inflation at the cyclic rate. U.S. proxies, Colombia, Brazil, and Chile are talking about invading Venezuela. I know Brazil's been hyped up by the media. I don't know that Brazil has done any. I mean, they're not taking any actions that I know of. We've talked about this all summer, kind of, Angel, the different border tensions between particularly Colombia and Brazil and Venezuela. I don't know if the Chile can take care of its own business. Chile's got its own problems. I don't think that they would want to get involved in any Venezuelan incursion. But really, is an invasion necessary? If you just go in there with food, the people will really do what you want anyway. I don't know that you think the Venezuela's military is capable of putting up any fight at this point. If you just continue to allow it to degrade and fall apart little by little, I mean, it could take care of itself, right? But the Chinese are knee deep in Venezuela, so that's going to kind of change everybody's attitude about the whole thing, and their perspective on what should be done or not done. So again, it's in the bond market. Bonds did recover a little bit, but still 2.64. Holy cow. You think about how far we've come down from that 3.2 just a few months ago. That's what kind of drop is that percentage-wise? 50, 1/3, 15% roughly, something like that. 15% drop in a value, if you want to put it that way, in that short period is pretty drastic. 20% is considered a correction in the stock markets, right? We'll see if we get down to 18,000 in the Dow, how that plays out. But hey, everybody's happy today. Everybody's happy that there's jobs. Ride it out. I wouldn't make any, like Greg was talking about, I wouldn't be buying into this, especially the hype. So that's going on there. We got a few minutes left here. Yeah, I'm glad you're being sarcastic, Rooster. That's good to hear. I kind of figured. Venezuela is not as bad as the media would want you to think, Rangel. I don't know, 5 million people leaving a country over basically 4-year span is pretty bad. I guess you could say some of the stuff is anecdotal, but roving gangs taking out truck convoys and stuff. The lack of just economic activity in general and the hyperinflation is pretty drastic. But I mean, people are getting by, obviously. But Maduro also seems to be quite the imbecile, not the smartest, sharpest guy either. But we shouldn't. I mean, I don't think we should have a hand in it as far as a incursion either. That would be foolish, I guess. Hollywood is garbage, right, Barry? No doubt. Hey, Billy Bird Outdoors checked in with us. Good morning, Billy Bird. How are you doing? Tommy Boy 9 hasn't checked in with us. You have to see his antlers later. Here's an article about the bond market, it looks like, on the zero hedge. It's relatively new, too. I wonder if they saw the bounce in the bonds. I'm sure that's going to get into how not to fight the bond market. New movies are mostly garbage because of catering to the Chinese market. They have to be simple enough for them to dub over, or they get rejected by China, which is apparently the second largest market. All right, because nobody here is watching their junk anymore. So the bond vigilantes warned 2019: fasten your seat belts, as if it could get any crazier than it already has in the last 3 or 4 months. So this is from bondvigilantes.com. So this is probably going to be a specific, so probably that's probably a good place to go and just look into how bonds work and the prices affect everything else. You know, let me pop this in here over on the other side. Well, with everybody else catering to the Chinese, I mean, Google censorship being implemented for the Chinese cause, et cetera, et cetera. Apple took a big hit yesterday, day before. Their sales are tanking. I don't know what their sales like are in Japan. There was a couple articles about that. Yeah, this would be a good article to read in your own time. I'm not going to drag you guys through this right now, this late into the hour, but I'll put it in the description box when either you refresh it, should check it out later, or just go over to Zero Hedge and find it. Should be right there, but be interested to see what they're saying about getting prepared and just watching that bond market again. That is how your credit is going to be determined for your debt notes that you pull out of the bank, and whether or not they're there or not when you go to get them, right? See if they got any follow up on the Apple stuff, because their sales, I don't know if their sales were just in America really limited, or if it was worldwide, if it was the Chinese weren't buying as well, but they were like calling it the end of the Apple era. They were trying to find ways to get people to buy Apple Apple products, because I guess they're just slowing down, which is still pretty significant sales, but they were comparing it how the value of the Apple stock had basically lost the value of a Facebook stock. So they had pretty much lost that's how much bigger Apple is than Facebook. Well, because Apple makes real products, Facebook is nothing. Yeah, here they keep floating this out here. Fed president from Cleveland says if inflation doesn't rise, Fed could stop hikes. They really don't want to raise rates because they're going to continue that inversion problem. But thanks for checking in, y'all. Thanks for coming in this afternoon or afternoon. Goodness, I wish it was afternoon. We wrapping it up already. Angel R says news last night was claiming Apple took the hit because of dwindling sales in China. Okay, it was China. They were talking about it all over here about the different problems in sales. I just didn't catch what if there was a country problem, worldwide problem. Yeah, there it is right there. Tech giant tanked 10% on Thursday after a shock warning on fiscal first quarter guidance and the effects of a China slowdown. It is now down more than 39% from a record high set in October. Whoa. Pipe down there, Junior. Yep, so it's mostly a China's effect. So there you go. Delaware Patriot says they're eventually going to quarantine an area with bad credit social scores, like Escape from New York. The Chinese might test run that for us. They might give that a test run to see how that works out and implement it elsewhere, right? Because the Chinese are already building social scores on people to determine their social suitability and how they can interact with the public. Looks like a lot of fun in the sun out there in the southeast today. But yeah, that social score deal is definitely. I don't think they'll get to the time of a whole area, Delaware. I think they will just take out individuals in their court. They don't want the bad apples to ruin the bunch, so they'll be picking off the bad apples as their scores go to a certain point. Once your score gets so high, you won't be able to trade. You won't be able to get a job. You'll probably lose your job and go from there. Goodness, that could get ugly, right? Barry Wood says China knows how to control its people. They're both more socially in tune. Their people are much more nationalistic in that respect too, as they will not rock the boat if it's seen as something that will harm the national character. Or did our big rain swath to go over here on the? There it comes. There it comes for us out here on the West Coast. It's coming for you, Rooster. You're going to get it first. Just don't take it all. Make sure you pass some our way. We're supposed to get some snow tomorrow night or so. So that's knock on wood for that. Wanting to get a little bit of action. And Barry, there's definitely coming in your neck of the woods. You and West Wind Survival and a couple other folks up there getting the rain and snow. Escape from Delaware, Billy. Okay. Rooster says when we get to where a job isn't the most important thing in our lives, things will change for the better. Well, the job isn't definitely the most important thing, but it is the controlling thing, right? I don't know that most people put their job as an important thing, but is it's like the necessity, right? It's like it drives everything else. I think you're right, Rooster. That's definitely true. We need more social. I don't know what's a good word for it, but I know what you're saying. Yeah, the job has far too much importance and central in our lives instead of the families and everything else. Yeah, this is a slight Pineapple Express, I believe, Rooster. It's going to deliver a good dose of rain. Angel, you're going to get snow down your way. That'll be the day. That'll be some serious global cooling, climate change taking place right there, right? Well, let me check in on the Twitter machine real quick. Anybody see any other incidents out there to report on in your area or otherwise to bring up to the crew, to throw out to the crowd that may be of interest or not? Delaware's a visionary, making an individual success plan. I need one of those. I still haven't figured it out. Oh, this is a couple of hours ago. Let me check it on the, I didn't see it on the links in here. Ebola hits Europe. Oh, there it is. Let's check this real quick. The Ebola in the central Congo has been getting pretty out of control. Ebola is feared to have hit Europe after an isolation room unit was set up in Sweden, of all places. Of all daggum places, Sweden following a patient on. A person believed to have contracted Ebola is being held in isolation in Sweden's Uppsala University Hospital. You know how bad you have to be condition wise to be vomiting blood at that point? That person is beyond help. What have they been doing the last week? As they were having their fever and everything else. Like, what were they thinking? They were admitted to Inkoping Hospital before being transferred to Uppsala to their infection clinic. The emergency clinic at Inkoping has been closed in contact with the patient are also being looked after, the authorities said. That was a translation error there, I think. This is some of their pictures, I guess, of how they isolate and clean up. Staff caring for the patient are using protective clothing and special training. Test results will likely be ready sometime tonight. This is still only a suspicion, and other diseases are clearly possible. The patient is believed to have visited Burundi in Central Africa before returning home. The infectious disease is not believed to be active in this area. Yeah, I would hope there's not Ebola in the water in Sweden. We'd definitely have bigger problems if that was the case. Burundi, what's its relationship to DRC? This outbreak in the DRC has killed more than 368 people. The disease is believed to have a 50% mortality rate. Well, it really just depends on the level of care you got. Whoever went into the hospital vomiting blood is done. They're not going to make it out of that, no matter what care they get. They've waited too long to get assistance. You really got to catch it when the fever starts, if you have any chance. At least the best chance, I guess I should say. You can survive it, but the odds are really against you once you get to that stage. Ebola is not airborne, but extremely infectious through bodily fluids. We hope, knock on wood, that still remains true. Airborne Ebola would be like the worst thing ever. But everybody talks about the airborne zombie virus, right? 28 days, all the other movies. I mean, it's only with the evolution, the way viruses work, it's only a matter of time before it develops enough to kill a lot of people because we have done so much to prevent that. Check my map for Burundi, exactly where it is compared to the DRC. My geography might be a little bit off. Prepper X, good morning. How you doing? Well, we were talking about thermometers and medical kits the other day on that prepping calendar and our prepping plan, and just a simple, thermometer when viruses and things like that take hold, being able to monitor your temperature could be very important because, like I was saying, if this person would have known that they needed to seek medical assistance before they got to the stage of vomiting blood, might have helped. Maybe, probably. Let me check my map here just to give everybody a reference. Central African Democratic Republic of Congo is where most of the outbreak has been. Burundi is right there in the middle. Okay, it's that tiny country right next to Rwanda. Nice. So that would be a Western or Eastern movement. Most of the Ebola outbreak had been in these northern regions up here of the DRC. So moving, if it traveled, if this guy in person doesn't indeed have Ebola, which it could still be, I believe, something like Marburg, or there's other viruses that are similar in the way they act, then maybe it's one of those because those are all active in these areas. But that would be a kind of Eastern movement of the disease if it is indeed got by a traveler, which means a local has it in that area, and then all bets are off about where the actual spread of the disease is. Unless they went to Burundi and for some reason traveled up into the war-torn region of the Northern Democratic Republic of Congo. Not a smart travel move, in my opinion, but maybe they're part of the resistance. I don't know. So there's just a little bit of concern there as that rolls into Europe potentially, and other travelers could be having that problem, especially if it's traveled to places that there was no warnings out for Ebola. Although if you're traveling, you should always be mindful of the many, many different diseases, especially in that area. I mean, just going to Mexico, your TB rates and everything else are much higher. So disease pandemic preparedness, where are we at with that? Yeah, it may not be so democratic, right, Delaware? Prepper X keep one in the Faraday bag. You're looking into non-electrical temp strips for the head as mercury thermometers can break. I see what you're saying. Oh, so you keep an electric thermometer in your Faraday because you don't like the more traditional glass thermometers that we all grew up with. Electric temp strips, huh? A lot of non-electric temp strips. That's interesting. How accurate can that be? Um, why are you retracting your messages, Rooster? I didn't get to see them. Billy Bird says it's all good when the mob has your back. Is that right? What mob are we speaking of here? I missed that. You talking about what the Rooster's talking about? All right, that Ebola story definitely took me over time, folks. Thanks for checking in. Have a good Friday. Enjoy your weekend. If we don't see you out here on the Twitter machine, I would just remind you what Greg said. We're in a stock market crash. It's just a matter of how it plays out. And don't go buy in while it's still dropping. Definitely make sure there's a solid form if you are wanting to expose yourself at all. But in the same vein, too, get your cash out of a bank if you have anything more than what is needed to pay bills. So But everything's rosy today because somehow we got a super job report in December. So, yay. But y'all have a good weekend, y'all. Thanks for checking in. Live free.